Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I have another Cosmere controversy I want to talk about. This is a fairly mild controversy because as far as I can tell, at least in the fandom, most people kind of jumped right on board with this distinction really quickly. And that distinction is, what are the native Rosharans called? Are they the Parshmen? Are they Parshendi? Are they listeners? Or are they singers? The story has essentially given us our answer, and most of the fandom has leaned into the what I would consider the correct terminology, being the listeners or the singers. As a species or as a race of people, they would be the singers. But the ones that we follow, that small subgroup that, kind of ran off, they're the listeners. So that's it. Very quick video. No, I'm just joking. We're going to talk about it a little more. But of course, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, this is one of the really interesting things that I think Brandon added to the Stormlight Archive, this idea of the nomenclature of the native Rosharan species. They're ironically not just called Rosharans. I mean, I guess that you can't really call them that because the planet now has multiple species that are non native to it. So, they're all, after some point, have become Rosharans. So, there's a distinction, there that needs to be made, essentially. So, this, of course, will have Total Stormlight Archive spoilers if that wasn't already evident. So, I kind of want to talk about it from that perspective, obviously. So, when we get early on in the story, we learn about these people that are known as the Parshendi. They are the enslaved class of Roshar, or mostly of Alethi culture. So they are basically, not even basically, they're completely enslaved people, but they are, for whatever reason, mostly nonverbal. They seem to be very low intelligence and stuff. We learn that that's because it's the physical form that they've taken called dull form, which makes them seem, dumber. Well, just, I don't know why the form exists based on the nature of all their other forms. It's probably just like an absence of a natural form because of the whole trapping of Bieto Mishram thing. That's what I'm going to assume, even though that's not clearly spelled out yet. I mean, it's kind of spelled out in Rhythm of War, I guess. But neither here nor there. So we kind of learned that these people call them the Parshendi. Like, that is just their term for it. And there's no, like, greater distinction for that name. Like, there's no greater definition for that, would translate to English. But later on, when they meet the freed, the, never having been captured listeners who end up becoming the ones that they fight, they call them Parshmen. No, the slaves are Parshmen, and the ones that they end up fighting they call Parshendi, which essentially means Parshman who can think. So it's already like kind of a slur when you think about it in that context. If their modification of it is just literally just, oh, the people that can think or whatever that are different than those. So for obvious reasons, like calling them that, which also is not what they would prefer to be called because it's not their chosen, cultural name or anything like that. It becomes incredibly obvious that, Parshendi and Parshman and stuff is just that Alethi, slave master class language for it. So when we learn that they call themselves the listeners, I thought that was really cool because it has obviously a direct connection with the idea that they can hear the rhythms of Roshar. So they're the listeners. They can hear nature and stuff. They have this hardline connection to the nature of their world in a way that the other non-native Rosharans just don't. And so it makes sense that they would be called listeners. But we kind of learn that that is almost a cultural distinction for this group of people of the planet because essentially their entire species, which seems kind of to be like a Brandon just kind of giving it the name because it seems like he wanted to think about it more, but he started to use so many terms in the books that he realized it was becoming complicated. So he just kind of settled on singers, which is, I think it was made clear in Oathbringer that that's what they call themselves or they consider themselves to be, kind of thing. But I find it very interesting that they're also, this idea of singing and listening because they can hear the rhythms of Roshar, but they can also reproduce numerous sorts of rhythms of Roshar and ones that are just completely integral and native to who they are. So they are, in a sense, they are singers, but they are also listeners. So the fact that this is almost an accidental naming convention that Brandon kind of stumbled on, I think is brilliant because it describes them perfectly and it has this kind of elegance to it that I really love. And it kind of helps also remain distinctive between the idea of native Rosharans and non-native Rosharans, but they're all Rosharans because they've all been here for thousands of years. So it's like you can't say they're not Rosharan, but they're not the native Rosharans. So we have our listeners, which kind of at this point in the current point of the story seems to be the bulk of the singers who are left. They're the ones who are listeners, and the ones who are the singers that weren't taken over by the Forsaken. The that's Wheel of Time. The Fused, yes. Those ones who left at the end of Rhythm of War and stuff, they're going to basically integrate themselves into the listener culture. So ultimately I think we're going to end up calling all the native Rosharan, the ones with the true connections to the planet, we're going to end up calling all of them listeners. So I really like that. I thought that was a lot of fun. I think that's a really interesting kind of way to play with this idea of like the subjugated class versus like their actual, true proper culture that had been getting erased by the people that was subjugating them and stuff. So it's kind of a fun little element that Brandon added in there without being overly, heavy handed about it or anything. It's not like we have a situation like in Harry Potter where we have someone, even though that whole thing is just so messy. The fact that you have someone trying to be like a literal slave abolitionist, but you have all the characters around them making fun of them and laughing at them for doing it, that's just like, whoa, that aged so terribly. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. But I like the fact that Brandon at least injected it in here, even though it's probably a subject that he's, not well versed in and like probably, I mean, I don't know, like a lot of people, they're not very comfortable kind of digging into that kind of thing when they don't have what they feel is like firsthand knowledge of those kind of distinctions. So the fact that he went into it, I think, is still really, really cool. And I think it's a huge step up from what he did with the ska, because he clearly made a slave class in the Mistborn series, and then there's also like physical differences that was imposed on those people there. But it didn't seem like he kind of, I mean, it kind of get fixed, but it's not heavily influenced. I mean, it's not heavily like hammered on. He doesn't hammer it home too much. He doesn't like super like deal with it, overindulge in it, which I personally appreciate, because it would have made the story a lot less fun if all we were doing was living in the depressing part of the world, I guess, dealing with the stuff that shouldn't really exist on any planet but constantly keeps existing. But whatever, neither here nor there. But I really like this idea that there is a distinction in the way in which we talk about the Parshendi and all this kind of stuff. The idea that before, when they were a slave class, they were like the Parshmen, and then they became the Parshendi when they were like respected warriors. But now we understand on their terms what they call themselves. They're the listeners, they're the singers, they're actually the dawn singers as well. So even within the religious aspect of the Alethian stuff, they have a very kind of venerated placement in society and in history and stuff. So I just really like that a lot. I hope Brandon continues to kind of play with it and keep, as we kind of get more of this integration stuff going on, we learn more about their culture in a way that's less flashbacks and more just what's currently going on, especially with this whole idea of the intelligent chasm fiends and stuff. I can't wait to get into all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and leave this video here. Make sure you like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel and all that. And coming up soon, we're probably going to start talking about Stormlight 5 theories. So make sure you subscribe for that, and it'll probably be on Patreon. It'll be the Cosmere crew early exclusive. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff, and some of it will be exclusive Patreon videos that are just Cosmere theory videos and stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But as always, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.